All right, another Grapple TV podcast. Today we're doing a Zoom interview. I have Gregory Johnson on the line. Well, via Zoom, anyways. I guess on the video line. I don't know. How do you want to call it?
I think line works. It
Okay.
works. It's universal.
So, who the hell is Gregory Johnson? Tell us who that man is.
Well, I do business consulting out here in Philadelphia, but with that I get to travel all over the world, which is pretty cool. And with that, I get to train at a lot of different jiu-jitsu schools as I'm traveling. So that's pretty much like a traveling jiu-jitsu pilgrim.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. How did you get into jiu-jitsu?
Well, my first experience with jiu-jitsu was actually friends of my parents. I remember distinctly the year the Chargers played the 49ers. I was a little kid. I think that was 96. The friends of my parents were like really into like in the kung fu scene in New York, and were in like kung fu movies. And they were just ethnically ambiguous enough to be an Asian extra. They're actually from Puerto Rico, but that's his words. He's like, I'm just ethnically a bit ambiguous enough to fill in different roles in different as a stuntman and or like a bad guy in different kung fu movies and martial arts fillers. So he's really heavily into that. And every year we would go visit them. And that particular year, we went to go watch the Super Bowl at their house. And at halftime, my dad was like, "Hey, show him some like jujitsu, kung fu stuff, Angel." And he's like, "Brazilian jiu-jitsu or Japanese?" And my dad's like, "I don't know what that is, but sure." And I still remember him showing my sister, him and his friend showing my sister, uh, and I think somebody else was there too. But I just remember being shown like arm lock from the guard, and like him explaining it, that we should learn this. We gotta learn Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. It's this new stuff he'd been learning in Philadelphia. And flash forward years later, I end up, I don't know why it took so long, but I finally discovered jiu-jitsu with my brother. Found a note on the windshield of his car for an advertisement for a local school. And they advertised Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. I'd looked before, but I couldn't find anything locally, at least where I was, just outside of Philadelphia. And we ended up going to the trial and doing like a summer membership. And that's like probably 8 or 9 years now, and I haven't stopped since.
What school was that?
It was a school that's not around anymore, but it's called Wings Martial Arts. And now I train at Balance Studios. And oddly enough, Phil and Rick McLeese, my instructors, who I've been with for 4 or 5 years now, they were at that same school that my dad's friends used to train at. And I remember mentioning him like Angel, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the little Puerto Rican guy. I remember him." So, and they're huge. They're kind of like Huron and Henner size. So they're not short individuals. And Angel's like 5'5", 5'4". He's a tiny little guy. But yeah, they remembered him. So it was like long, small world. Like everything seems to be with jiu-jitsu, but also even smaller, all being in Philadelphia. So
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, Henner and Heater are giants.
they are not small people.
They should be playing basketball.
Well, I've joked with them before that like because their family's Scottish. The Gracie last name is from Scotland, and they're built more like Highlanders. My extended family are all that, they're all tall like that. So to me, it's always kind of funny that they're obviously Brazilians doing jiu-jitsu, but they're also that all the Highlanders were big, tall guys like that. So it's kind of funny that, and those long guys with their leverage are really annoying to roll with. And then they've been doing jiu-jitsu since birth, so it's just a complete unfair advantage. But they're awesome.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'8", so I'm not 6'4".
So you're a short guy,
Yeah.
especially compared to them.
Mm-hmm.
So what
So,
belt?
and it's funny.
Go
I'm
ahead.
a purple belt.
Purple
I'm a
belt.
purple belt. Yep, with Phil and Rick at Balance in Philadelphia.
Do you compete in the tournaments like the Pan Ams and the Worlds and the Nogi?
So my competition experience has been pretty well, I guess you could say, relegated to most of the sub only. events. I've done almost most of my competition. My competition experience rather has been with Rose Gracie and other tournaments of that, like with the sub-only movement. So I've flown out to California a couple times for Gracie Worlds, Gracie Nationals. She's done a couple regional events. We've done some events here in Philly. I was able to. I got to help out a couple times at some of her events as different parts of the event, reffing the scores or whatever. And she actually brought her event to Philadelphia. I got to help facilitate that, which is pretty cool. We did a sub-only event in Philadelphia about 2 years ago where we rented out the convention center, did a whole bunch of super fights, brought some of Dan and her death squad guys down to do some super fights, and then people got to experience the sub-only style of competition in Philadelphia at a pretty cool location. So that was fun.
So when you're talking sub-only, are you referring to no gi or gi also?
That particular event was no gi, but I've done the gi and no gi events both. I prefer gi sub-only events, but there's not a whole lot of them.
And do you prefer that rule set, or are you open to any rule set?
I mean, I'm open to any rule set, but I prefer my personal preference is the sub-only because when I first started jiu-jitsu and I did a competition, I remember not really understanding the point system at the time, and I didn't in the moment. I didn't really pay attention to the points, and I remember not really liking the tournament as much because the guy I went against got 2 points, and I was a new blue belt, and he'd gotten 2 points and just basically ran away or held me depending on what part of the tournament was, and I didn't really like that. And then I found out that there was a sub-only option, and that really interested me, so I tried that, and it felt more like rolling in the gym, but with consequences, so to speak. There's more intensity, more sense of urgency in doing a tournament with that type of rule set than the rule set with those points, because someone can hide behind advantage or if you submit someone, obviously trumps everything, but it's more open, I feel in my experience with competing against someone. And I also found that all those events, and also working at them, everyone seems to be smiling and having a little bit more of a good time. Consensus overall is more fun for everyone, I think.
Interesting. Never thought about that. Let's jump into your Creonche tour.
Yes.
Explain the theory behind that and what got you motivated to do that. People don't know what I'm talking about, so you better explain it first.
Okay, so I did last year. 2019, I visited 37 schools. It's actually probably more, but that's just the ones that I remember. I had on my notes, taking a class and took notes at a school. I'm sure there was probably more. But I got to travel to all these different schools, and I didn't take into account necessarily, I didn't care about the school that I train at as far as, there's a lot of people, you mentioned Creonte, there's people who stick only to their particular flag or team or association, or maybe even within association, there's some who don't go train in another school even within the association. I've heard the stories of that. And I'm fortunate in that, first, my instructors, Phil and Rick, are super open. They've got their school in Philadelphia. They've got a bunch of locations. Everyone always comes and visits and trains there all the time. And then, so I've kind of always been exposed to this open mindset of training with everyone type of approach to jiu-jitsu.
Sure.
Everyone in town is invited to come train at their school, so there's not they have an open door policy, they call it. And I've seen people from other schools that I won't mention any schools, but there's some people who've come through from the area or from around, and they'll be they come to visit and they're super friendly, but they're they see somebody shooting video, they're like, hey, can you not let me be on the video? they hide. So, and I understand why, and there's some reasons behind that and some history. But for me, I travel a lot for work. I do a lot of work consulting with jiu-jitsu schools from a business standpoint, but I also, my normal job is I work in addition to that not just with jiu-jitsu schools, a lot of coffee shops, some CrossFits, so a couple software companies. And what I do is I actually will meet with a business for usually about a week, and I'll kind of try and help everywhere within their business, find ways that we can make their business better, find ways we can make it more efficient. My background's in finance, so or at least my schooling's in finance. I spent most of my life in customer service management and management of locations and such. So I'm training managers and all every kind of little bit of everything in the business world. So I help smaller businesses kind of figure out where they can find a way to improve, or even if they're doing really well, they can be better. And that brings me to a lot of different places all over the world, really, but mostly in the United States. And I try to always train when I'm on the road. And I mean, it's always even better when I'm working with a jiu-jitsu school because I just get to train all week, and it the work kind of ties together. But when I'm in a different town, I try to always make sure I stop by and train somewhere. And a lot of times now, because I've traveled so much and I've gotten kind of a reputation for traveling all over as a pilgrim of sorts, I have a lot of different friends all over the country that I've talked to at other events or online or whatever. So I have kind of like a framework of places I want to visit, or I've met at other schools that I want to go visit their school, or at events, seminars, or whatnot. And so I try to always stop by and see friends, but also I'm always up to visit a new school that I haven't been to, or there's one in an area. It happens quite frequently that I'll end up at a school that I've never heard of. And now I'm at a point where I try to always reach out online if I can to see, either get a schedule or get an idea. Because a lot of times the schedule on the website may not match what reality is because it hasn't been updated, or things change, or, they might have a new instructor in town. But it's been a cool experience. I've gotten to either see old friends, catch up with them, make new ones that next time I've come through, I've ended up staying at their house, or they've been insistent on hey, I don't care. If you're going to be nearby, I'll come visit you at a school nearby. It might be a couple hour difference, but they might be working up near there next time I come through. So it's been pretty cool. I've gotten to have a lot of cool friends all over the world that I can truly call friends, and some of them I've just met because I was in a town or knew I was driving through and I want to get some training in, and now I'm friends, keep in contact online, or some of them turned into clients because they've been training at the school that I've trained at, and they might own a company, and then they're like, hey, next time you're through, let's do some real work. Let's go. So it's been a fun all around experience to explore.
So how many states have you been to during your tour? Just
personally, I've been to every state except for Alaska. But with jiu-jitsu, I want to say it has to be at least 40 states in the last year.
Name some of the schools that you went to.
Some of the highlights for this last year, I went to the Valente brothers down in Miami. I met Pedro at Huron, did an event couple of years. He's done the last couple of years. I got to meet Pedro there. He taught at one of the events. And Pedro's also friends with my instructor, Phil and Rick. So that's really cool. When I went to go visit, they have a very strict rule with their gis. They want everyone to wear not just white gis, but their gis. And they have rentals available. So everyone looks uniform, I understand that. So I just messaged ahead of time. A friend of mine had been a couple times before, and she had said, my friend from Juliana from Brazil was like, you've got to go try, Pedro's really nice as a person. You've met him, he's awesome, but their school's even more amazing. And so I emailed, I saw a little questionnaire, I think, on their website, I think, and I wrote a thing on there, and what are the times? What do I need to do to make sure I come in and don't miss anything? And they were really nice. Wrote back right away, and they're like, yeah, we see your because they asked where we were trained was part of the questionnaire. I said, you're Phil and Rick's student, by all means come by, we'll make sure you get your gi and join us. So I stopped by, had a great class. I had only met Pedro before that, but his brother, I think his gi was teaching, and so he taught class, but then Pedro came over and said hi, and it was just actually that school is probably one of the most professional. I've told a couple people this is probably one of the most professional schools I've ever been to. Not only was the jiu-jitsu top notch and super warm welcome, but everything from the time you walked in to the time you left was very polished and professional, and there was no like trying to sell you anything type of polished. It was just very like, I don't know how else to explain it. They were like professionals at what they do, and they took everything obviously really seriously about teaching class. There was some cool stuff they did with self-defense, but it was like kind of an aliveness to it. It wasn't just drilling self-defense techniques you see at some schools where they do the self-defense side and then they get to rolling. There was like very focused drills they did with their self-defense, and it was just, and with all the whole time very welcoming and great experience. Some other places I've been to that I like, little hole in the wall places actually, like that I didn't expect to. Like my sister lived in Lynchburg, Virginia, and there's a academy there. Drawing a blank, and then I think it's called Lynx. I have a picture in my head. It's right in the middle of Lynchburg, Virginia, and I was like, oh, because I'd been there before, and the school I went to was nice, but it was a small little place, and I just happened to go past the place. I was getting breakfast there, and I was like, oh, I'll come back for class, and it turns out I end up not only are they one of Pedro Sauer's affiliates, and I've trained a couple times at Pedro's, and Pedro's super warm and inviting and solid guy himself too, but ended up being one of his black belts, but not only one of his black belts, like the guy has been training jiu-jitsu since like the old days when Pedro first came to the East Coast, and had worked a lot with like special forces guys, and he had a couple of black belts there training out. And those who don't know, Lynchburg's like a little town in Virginia that's really like almost a rest stop on the way through Virginia to go from somewhere else to somewhere else. That's kind of like not what place people would often stop or expect to have really good jiu-jitsu, but they ended up having really good jiu-jitsu, really huge class, welcoming. Their one black belt there was a no-gi guy, had done a bunch of like MMA fights and like competitions and like pretty high level stuff. I think he'd either done EBI or was an EBI alternate that like I didn't expect to like. We had, like we were saying before, it's jiu-jitsu is a small world, so I didn't expect to. I expect we might know one or two people. We ended up knowing a whole list of different people and have like similar friends. That my sisters lived there for 6 years, and I've never discovered that school. But I was one that now when I go back, I make sure I stop by. And of course, other schools I've trained at, like here on Henner's Place in California when I visit. Ty Gay's place. I don't know if you know him at Redline Jiu-Jitsu in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Gone to schools in Vermont, South Burlington. There's a school with Julio Fernandez. He was Carlson Gracie's, or was one of Carlson Gracie's top black belts that he promoted himself before he passed. He just got his core belt, I think, this last year. Super, super nice guy. I think he's an accountant or something, like a GE or some big company, but he's like world-class jiu-jitsu, world-class surfer from Brazil who like lives up in the middle of nowhere in Vermont because that's just where he ended up. And that's another like, hole in the wall surprise. Like I go to Vermont all the time to go skiing or go on trips, but I ended up in Vermont to go skiing and discovered here, there's practically a coral belt just kind of hidden away in Vermont. So been a lot of experiences like that. Another good one to stop by, and I stopped by years ago, and I try to always stop by whenever I'm in the area. Even if I can't make class, I'll stop by just to say hi. Is Marcio Stembowski. For those who don't know, he's a coral belt, one of the original Holz Gracie's black belts. I believe there's only 6 of them, and he's one of them. His son, Naaman Gracie, fights in Bellator. His daughter, Deborah, is a black belt too, and he's I think Henzo's brother-in-law. So he's super tall, lanky, old guy, older guy, but he's probably forgotten more jiu-jitsu than most people know. He's been around for a really long time. He's got a lot of cool stories of the old days with all the different members of the Gracie family, and living in Brazil. Super nice, welcoming guy, world-class jiu-jitsu, known for his triangle. If you ever listen to the Eddie Bravo podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast where Hickson was on, where Eddie Bravo asked him about like who was pulling off like the history of jiu-jitsu with like triangles and stuff. He mentions Makahau. He's like, no one did triangles before Makahau, and that's Makahau. He's like the Godfather, the Triangle. Well, Bernardo at BJJ Fanatics, I think, just did a wrist lock instructional with him that just came out. So that's another example. Like his jiu-jitsu is world class, like I said, but the reason why I always make sure I stop by is because he's probably above and beyond jiu-jitsu. He's probably one of the top 5 nicest, like greatest people I've ever met in life. Just a quality human being who, I mean, I've stopped by. I've known I'm not going to be able to make it to class, but I stopped by, sat off to the side, and talked with him for like half hour, 45 minutes. When actually, you know how Facebook, I don't know if it still does, but Facebook used to have like you could see what friends were nearby. It had like an option on your Facebook that you could like see in the messenger. It would say what friends were nearby. And I remember driving through for work. I had to go work in Boston, and I like drove by really early in the morning and happened to be, his school's right in between Philadelphia and Boston. So if I go to Boston, I try to always make sure I stop there if I have to drive for work. I like to drive a lot because then I can stop and see people and see friends and whatnot, as opposed to flying, because it gives me more freedom with my time. And so he saw that I guess he was just discovering Facebook himself and saw that option, and he started calling me on he didn't even know it was an option. He just said it, friends nearby. I saw I was nearby, and he clicked on it. And next thing you know, I hear his voice, and I'm like, and at that point, I didn't even know you could call on Facebook. This was a couple of years ago. And he's like, "Oh, are you coming to my 6 o'clock class?" I'd left my house at like 4 a.m. And so I was like just about to drive past his at just about 6 a.m. class of school. And he's like, "It says you're nearby. Does that mean you're coming to class?" And I was like, well, I really can't because I'm on my way to work. But when I come back through, I absolutely will. So he's like, make sure you don't drive by without saying hi, at least. So I actually drove by, said hi, and kept going. So there's the great thing about the jiu-jitsu community is there's so much. It's so many different facets of people. There's so many different people, right? There's all different walks of life, and it's because they all unite on the mats. There's a common bond that everyone shares. So you end up with friends that are from every walk of life and different personalities, beliefs, structures, whatever. It brings all kinds. So everyone kind of eventually ends up a family of sorts. Which to me that makes. I've never understood like you mentioned before, karate. I've never understood the not wanting to. I can see it from maybe an instructor standpoint, not wanting other people to go away or being afraid of sharing secrets like in maybe the old days. But now with YouTube, there's everything, every type of technique is probably available.
Well, before we got on this interview, you were telling me that you went to China and was dealing with the COVID-19 at the time. Tell us a little bit.
Yes. So I go to China. One of the people that I visit quite regularly owns a school in China, and I helped them a little bit with their business. And they're on a beach. They're very near a beach in a city called Haikou, which is like their version of Hawaii. It's this big island that's the most southern part of China, and they just have phenomenal weather. I mean, if you imagine Honolulu, it's on the same parallel on the globe as Honolulu. So they have fantastic weather all year round. Really, really welcoming people. The food's fantastic. And unlike other parts of China, there's no pollution. So they get paid. That city actually gets paid money from their government to maintain certain air qualities. So there's a lot of people who keep their families that have money that live on the mainland somewhere, and they'll keep their families in this particular neighborhood in the city, and they come down and visit their family on a regular basis. It's just a better place for to raise your kids in China. And so the school that's there has a huge kids program, probably the biggest in China. And the people who own that are from America, but they did all their jiu-jitsu in Brazil and then ended up in China. And so I go to visit them several times a year. I try to go every December and January. And I was over in December. I went through China, left all my stuff there, and then flew to Thailand for Henry Akins, did a Thailand camp. That's another thing I do. I do a lot of jiu-jitsu camps, either my own that I host or I go on camps, and just like love to travel. So I really enjoy Henry's camps. Really good guy. So I did his New Year's camp in Thailand, and when I came back with the intention of staying in China till just after Spring Festival, enjoying the holiday with my friends there in China, and then flying home and going about life. Well, the night before Spring Festival, which for those who don't know, Spring Festival is like Chinese New Year, but it's like New Year's, Christmas, Easter, and like something else in America all rolled into one. It's traditionally a 20-day festival before New Year's. If they're going to really celebrate, it's 20 years before, or 20 days before, and 20 days after. So it's a 40-day festival. If somebody has the means or wants to fully take advantage of it. And so I plan to just be there for the first half and then leave maybe a week or so after the holiday. And the day before, there was rumors that big stuff was happening around the country with the virus from Wuhan. And one of our friends was like, yeah, they're gonna keep everybody from traveling. I was like, yeah, right. And the next day we weren't allowed to go outside. So for almost 2 weeks, about 2 weeks, I was stuck in Haikou at my friend's house. And basically what everyone is experiencing now in America, I got to experience for roughly 2 weeks in China. And then they opened all flames. Everything was grounded. They didn't say you couldn't go outside, but you were advised to stay inside. And if you went outside without your mask, you got in big trouble. There was some video of people getting pulled off trains and buses and stuff. And then they eventually shut down all buses after they grounded planes and trains. They shut down buses. So everyone, wherever they were at, whatever general region they were at, there were corner stores and such open, but you couldn't drive anywhere. You couldn't, everyone uses e-bikes to ride around. It's like a motorcycle that's run with electric instead of gas. And everybody was kind of stuck with whatever part of the city they were, and everyone kind of stayed inside. So there was a lot of people kind of bored out of their mind as they are now. And with the internet situation in China, there's not the same access to all the different fun apps or amenities that we have in here in America. So there was no Netflix, there was no Amazon Prime, there's no Disney Plus, there's no YouTube technically doesn't work either. So there's very limited access to stuff when you're there in general. So everyone's stuck in their house. I got to read a lot. That was fun. And then they randomly opened up the country for one day, I guess, to let people move different places, or people had been stranded places. And they shut the country down again the next day. And I ended up finding a flight. I was originally supposed to fly from Haikou to a city in China to LA. That turned into getting a flight from LA, or from Haikou to Hong Kong to San Francisco to LA. That all got canceled, that got canceled about 6 times before they finally said, yeah, you're not actually going anywhere. And then I had to, last minute morning of, I was supposed to leave. I finally got in a flight, the new scheduled one that tied in with my flight from Hong Kong. I was supposed to leave Thursday, but Tuesday morning I found out that wasn't going to happen. There was no way I was getting all the flights out of China were getting shut down. So I got told if I can get out today, I can leave. So I literally, within 45 minutes, woke up, booked a flight to Taiwan, packed, and made it to the airport in time to get out. So I just kind of got out on the skin of my teeth. And I was in the last flight from China allowed into Taiwan, was there for about 6 hours, and then flew to Hong Kong finally. Was stuck in Hong Kong for 2 days, and then flew to San Francisco and then LA. And all those places, I probably got about 4 or 5 health checks at each location, which was a fun experience, to say the least. The only place I didn't get a health check was the United States, actually, which was interesting. So.
Well, I only got a couple more minutes here.
Okay.
Do you have any sponsors or any people you want to thank?
I want to thank, I guess, probably my instructors in Philly, Balance Studios. They've always been supportive of all my travels and whatnot, and have connected me with a lot of different people to go visit and train. Or they'll be like, "Hey, when you're in this city, go visit them." Also, probably, I have my own jiu-jitsu company brand, Pilgrim Jiu-Jitsu. We do jiu-jitsu trips all over the world. We've done we hosted Rose's event here in Philadelphia, and we still have 2 trips that are technically still on the calendar for the end of this year. So we'll find out how everything goes with COVID. But we're supposed to go to Sicily in September and Ireland in October. So we'll see what happens with that. With Corler Gracie and Jay Pages, he's a Kyle black belt, and Corler's one of Elio's grandkids too. He's Huron Hender's cousins.
That's all you got?
That's all I got. I don't have any sponsors, so
okay.
That's.
Well, hopefully, when you
maybe I should get some sponsors.
You should. You should. Hopefully, when you come out to LA, we can meet in person and talk a little bit more. I got to thank Roll Dog Kimonos, Luta Fight Gear, and Iron Lion Soap. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they get a hold of you?
You can get. I'm on Instagram, Detour Adventures. I'm also, that's my nickname is Detour, and then also Pilgrim Jiu-Jitsu, or Greg at pilgrimjiujitsu.com is my email.
Okay. Why don't you send me those little links and I'll put them up on the video.
Absolutely.
Well, it was nice talking to you, and great stories. And
thank you.
We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. All right, stay safe inside.
I'm going to try.
Luckily, you got the dogs to keep you company.
That's right.